To conceal my identity as an assassin, I married a man who couldn't even bring himself to kill a spider. During a later mission, I encountered the legendary top-tier assassin Orbit. Behind his mask, his eyes were as cold as frost, and the Glock pistol in his hand was pointed straight at my forehead.
But why?
Why was the wedding ring I gave my husband hanging from the necklace around Orbit's neck? The moment I finished dealing with the target, a message from my husband Nathan flashed across my phone screen. I dragged the body out of sight with practiced ease, then clipped onto the rope I'd anchored to the window frame earlier, and rappelled down the side of the brownstone. A black Aston Martin was idling at the curb. Just as planned, I slid into the passenger seat. Lith, my handler and getaway driver, tossed a pack of wet wipes into my lap. Without taking her eyes off the road, I wiped my hands, the sharp scent of antiseptic cutting through the city air. Finally, I unlocked my phone. Nathan had sent me a selfie, a playful shot of him in the kitchen, wearing nothing but the apron I got him for Christmas. Softened my voice, holding the phone to my ear. Hey, baby, wait up for me, okay? Got held up at work, but I'm on my way home now. From the driver's seat, Lilith made an exaggerated gagging noise. God, Anya, you're disgusting, aren't you? People supposed to be all reserved and stoic. A small smile played on my lips. If you had a husband as sweet as mine waiting at home with a hot meal, you'd be just like me. He's half American, half British, with this ridiculously handsome face and a heart of gold. He has soft black hair, a gentle nature, and a chest I could get lost in. The moment I walked through the door, Nathan was there. Honey, you're finally home, he murmured into my hair. The light in the living room went out. I was getting scared and I don't know how to fix it. I melted into his embrace for a second before pulling away. Don't worry, I've got it. I hopped onto a chair and swapped out the dead bulb for a new one. For a woman, whose personal best for blind assembling a Desert Eagle is 22 seconds. It was child's play. But my helpless husband looked at me with pure, unadulterated awe. You're amazing, Anya. I leaned down and kissed him. In my eyes, a man who could conjure up the layout on our dining table was just as amazing. We sat down to eat, and I asked casually, So, what did you get up to today, baby? Nathan paused for a beat, a fork halfway to his mouth, and smiled.
Oh,
Water the plants. Did a deep clean of the bathroom. Then I started prepping for dinner. I couldn't resist. I snuggled closer, wrapping my arms around his waist and whispering in his ear, Dinner's over. Ready for dessert? Without a word, he scooped me up and carried me to the bedroom. Just as his fingers began undoing the buttons of my shirt, he froze. You said you were working late, he said, his voice suddenly tight. Does working late now involve getting a man's tie stuffed in your pocket? My eyes widened as he pulled a wrinkled silk tie from my coat pocket, the murder weapon I'd used to strangle my target 2 hours ago. Nathan held me, tears streaming down his face. What did I do wrong? He choked out. Why would you need someone else? Is it because I don't have a job? I have savings, Anya. A lot. It's all yours, honey. Please don't leave me. His words were punctuated by desperate, ragged breaths, and my attempts to deny everything were lost in shattered moans. As he moved against me, all I could do was hold him tighter. The next morning I tried again, insisting that I loved him, only him, and that I would never, ever cheat. But I couldn't explain the tie. To prove my loyalty, I took the entire week off, clearing my schedule to stay home with Nathan. My life is a tightrope walk over a pit of danger, but I would never, ever allow my sweet, gentle husband to be exposed to any of it. His sadness deepened. Still, he cooked me lavish meals and told me with a determined look in his eye, It's not your fault. I believe you, Anya. You didn't cheat. It must have been some creep from the outside trying to seduce you. That's why he would do something so sleazy, putting his tie in your pocket. I latched onto the excuse. You're right, baby. It was definitely my creepy coworker. But he has no chance. I can't stand those cold, robotic tech guys. I only love you. You're so gentle. You make me want to protect you. Nathan's hand, which had been struggling with a can of tomatoes, suddenly stilled. Honey. He handed the can and the opener to me. I can't get it. Can you help me? I popped the lid open with a simple twist of my wrist. He gazed at me, his eyes filled with that familiar adoration and love. I looked at him and said sincerely, If I ever betray you, I whispered softly, you can beat me soundly, and then divorce me. I felt him smile against my cheek. His voice was as gentle as always when he replied, No. I'd kill him. We'd never get divorced. What a childish and ridiculous promise. This man couldn't even bring himself to slaughter a chicken for dinner. My husband could never have imagined that his wife had actually killed many, many men. When Lilith finally lost her patience, and started screaming at me through the secure comms unit. I told Nathan I had to end my vacation and get back to the office. You're already short-handed and you dare to go off-grid for a week? Can you stop hovering over that house husband of yours? For 5 minutes? I couldn't be bothered to argue. She would never understand this kind of happiness. Anything big on the horizon? I asked, a smile creeping into my voice. Our first wedding anniversary is next month. I want to buy him something really, really expensive, Lilith muttered, before her tone turned sly. Actually, there's something. $1 million bounty. But it's already been claimed. I wasn't concerned. There aren't many people who can outbid me for a contract. You don't trust me? What she said next, however, sent a genuine jolt through me. The person who claimed it, she said, her voice dropping, is Orbit. Orbit. A name every killer knew. A legend. An insurmountable force. He owed loyalty to no organization. His only allegiance was to flawless mission execution. It didn't matter who the target was or where they hid. A president, a warlord, another elite assassin. Orbit would finish the job within the deadline. His own name commanded the highest bounty on the dark web. A sum so astronomical no one dared accept the contract. When I was younger, I was arrogant. I once took a contract that Orbit had already claimed. I ended up watching from a distance as my targets had exploded. From a perfect shot fired from 600 meters away. I never even saw a shadow of Orbit. But things were different now. I was a married woman. I had a sweet, helpless husband to support. I decided to take it. I would at least try. Rumor had it, he turned down a $5 million contract to take out a mercenary leader, claiming he needed to focus on his family and cut back on the rough stuff. No one believed it. The consensus was that he'd made so much money. He was planning a gradual retirement. Lilith started gossiping again. I heard he's got British blood. Are all you Brits? So, I snapped the comms unit shut. At the Styx Club, the largest underground casino in Las Vegas, I stood behind a blackjack table, my face hidden by a stark white mask. Dressed in a tight black gown, I dealt cards with DAST fluid motions. Everyone here, from the patrons to the staff, was masked. The big job Lilith had assigned me, the $1 million contract, was here. And so was he, the legendary assassin everyone feared. Orbit. The target's name was Kavi. 38 years old, Persian, British. He cultivated the image of a refined gentleman, but in reality, he was a monster. Under the guise of philanthropic medical investments, Kavi secretly financed illegal human experimentation projects across the globe. My client was a mother whose daughter had been taken from her. When one of my colleagues rescued the girl from Kavi's research facility, she was missing, both of her eyes and her lower legs. 3 days after coming home, the 17-year-old girl killed herself with a fruit knife. Recent events had made Kavi paranoid. He was now constantly surrounded by a team of bodyguards. But here, inside the Styx Club, no one without an invitation was allowed. This was my chance. I waited patiently until a masked Kavi sat down at my table. My fingers flew, shuffling and cutting the deck with a flourish. In the seamless arc of the cards, I made my move. An ace. They landed perfectly in Kavi's hand. After a few rounds, Kavi's stack of chips had grown considerably. He leaned back, rubbing his left arm with a satisfied hum. He was relaxing. My own nerves, however, were tightening. Despite me feeding cards to Kavi, one man at the table kept winning. In fact, he was winning more than everyone else combined. He wore an impeccably tailored black velvet suit, and an emerald brooch on his lapel caught the dim light with a predatory glint. No matter how much he won, his demeanor never changed. He was a statue of calm indifference, stacking his chips with slow, deliberate movements. There was an aloofness about him, the cold detachment of a man accustomed to being in control. He knew I was cheating. He had to. I took a deep breath, preparing for the next hand. Suddenly the lights in the casino went out. A moment later, a smooth voice echoed from the overhead speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Styx Club's Midnight Masquerade. A single dark, gold spotlight illuminated a dance floor on one side of the casino. Soft jazz began to play, and the crowd started to move. A gloved hand extended, a delicate one accepted. Masked figures began to twirl and sway, their silhouettes weaving through the golden haze. I leaned against the blackjack table, my eyes locked on Kavi. As he made his way toward the dance floor, my hand slipped into a hidden slit in my dress, my fingertips brushing the hilt of my knife. I had a plan. Lure him into the shadows and end his life. Without a sound, I took a step forward, and an icy point of metal pressed sharply against the small of my back. Don't move. The man's voice was a low, cold monotone, utterly devoid of emotion. Every nerve in my body screamed, but I kept my expression neutral. The Styx has a no firearms policy. You fire that gun, and you won't walk out of here alive either. Is that so? He replied, his tone flat. Feel free to test it. The one small mercy was that the man in the suit didn't seem to want to cause a scene. He prodded me forward with the gun, and guiding me through the club's internal corridors. Every employee we passed, from dealers to security guards, stepped aside and bowed their heads respectfully. Not a single person questioned the weapon in his hand. My stomach sank. I was in deep trouble. We walked to the end of a long hallway and entered an impossibly lavish private suite. Crystal chandelier cast a cold, sterile light from the ceiling, knocking out a dealer and hiding her in a supply closet without anyone noticing. You've got some skills, he said. I raised my hands in a gesture of surrender. If I'd known you were the owner of the Styx, I would have been feeding you the winning hands. He ignored me completely. I respect talent, so I'll give you the courtesy of knowing why you're about to die.
Nix.
My pupils contracted.
He knew my code name.
The owner of the Styx Club was Orbit.
Shit.
If I'd known this was his territory, I never would have taken this job. But I couldn't die here. Nathan was waiting for me. Our anniversary was coming up. I forced a smile. We're in the same business. Can't we talk this out? Before the words were even out of my mouth, I drew a miniature pistol from a hidden holster in my dress. But Orbit was faster. A single, clean kick sent my gun flying. He snatched a silver dinner fork from a nearby table and threw it like a dart. I jerked my head to the side. The times grazed my cheek, tearing my white mask and sending it fluttering to the floor. My face was exposed. The gun in his hand, which had been aimed squarely at my forehead, wavered for a fraction of a second.
Bang.
The bullet screamed past my ear, shattering a crystal glass on the bar behind me. He stared at me, then took a slow, deep breath. The sound of the gunshot didn't ring in my ears. It was the silence that followed that deafened me. The crystal shards of the champagne flute tinkled onto the plush carpet, a delayed reaction to the bullet that had missed my skull by millimeters. Orbit hadn't missed. Orbit never missed. I remained frozen, my breath held in a painful knot in my chest. The legendary assassin stood less than 4 feet away, his chest heaving slightly beneath the velvet suit. The golden mask he wore, a featureless, mirrored surface save for the eye slits, reflected my own stunned, unmasked face. He lowered the Glock. His hand, usually steady as stone, was trembling. Get out, he rasped. The voice was distorted, likely a throat mic, but the cadence, there was a frantic edge to it that didn't match the robotic legend of Orbit. You missed, I whispered, my assassin's brain trying to make sense of the anomaly while my survival instinct screamed at me to run. I said get out, he roared, taking a step back, as if I were the radioactive one. In his sudden, violent recoil, the heavy emerald brooch on his lapel snagged on the inner lining of his jacket. The fabric pulled tight, and a silver chain tucked beneath his shirt was yanked free. It swung heavily in the sterile light of the chandelier. Time seemed to slow down. My eyes, trained to spot the glint of a sniper scope from a mile away, locked onto the object dangling at the end of that chain. It wasn't a dog tag. It wasn't a religious icon. It was a platinum band. A men's wedding ring. Specifically, a ring with a custom jagged scratch on the inner rim, a mistake I'd made when I clumsily tried to engrave forever onto it with a Dremel tool in our garage. My heart didn't just stop. It plummeted into my stomach. Why was the wedding ring I gave my husband hanging from the necklace around Orbit's neck? I looked from the ring to the masked face. The eyes behind the slits were wide, panicked. A chaotic mix of ice blue and green. Nathan's eyes. The realization hit me with the force of a freight train. The helpless husband who cried over a dead spider. The man who needed me to open jar lids. The man who supposedly spent his day watering plants and cleaning the bathroom. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The cognitive dissonance was threatening to shatter my mind. Orbit, Nathan, seemed to realize I had seen it. He shoved the ring back into his shirt, his body language shifting from lethal predator to a cornered animal. Go, he whispered, the voice modulator failing to hide the desperate crack in his tone. The back exit. Now. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my shoes, turned and bolted. But as I sprinted down the corridor, disabling a security guard with a mechanical, unthinking chop to the throat, my mind wasn't on the escape. It was on the terrifying realization that I was married to the most dangerous man on the planet. The drive back to the safe house was a blur. Lilith was chattering about the failed contract, about how Orbit was a lunatic for letting me go, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Drop me at home. I interrupted her.
What?
Anya, you're blown. You need to go to the safe house. Home. Now. I walked through the front door of our brownstone 40 minutes later. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a volatile cocktail of rage and confusion. The house smelled of roasted garlic and rosemary. Soft jazz was playing. Honey, is that you? Nathan came out of the kitchen. He was wearing a beige cardigan and pajama pants. His hair was damp, as if he'd just showered. He looked soft, edible, harmless. He looked at me, and his face crumbled into worry. Oh my God, Anya. You look pale. Tough day at the office. I stared at him. I looked for the tell. The tension in the shoulders, the callus on the trigger finger, the coldness in the eyes. It wasn't there. He was just Nathan. Yeah, I managed to choke out. Project deadline. It was murder. He rushed over, wrapping his arms around me. I stiffened. An hour ago, these arms had held a Glock pointed at my head. I could smell the faint, acrid scent of gunpowder masked heavily by his body wash, the citrus, one I bought him. You're trembling, he soothed, rubbing my back.
Come sit.
I made shepherd's pie. Your favorite. I let him lead me to the table. As he plated the food, I watched him. I needed to know. I needed to be 100% sure. Nathan, I said, my voice sharp. He jumped, nearly dropping the ladle. Yes, sweetie. I lost my earring. Under the table.
Can you check?
Of course. He smiled, that goofy, lopsided grin that made my knees weak, and ducked under the table. I grabbed the steak knife from my placemat. It was a test. A stupid, dangerous test. I dropped the knife. I aimed it so it would fall handle first, but close enough to his hand that a normal person would flinch, but a trained reflex would catch it. Clatter. The knife hit the floor inches from his fingers. Nathan shrieked. He scrambled backward, hitting his head on the underside of the table.
Jesus. Anya.
You dropped a knife. He crawled out, rubbing his head, looking at the knife with genuine terror. That could have taken a toe off. I stared at him.
He hadn't caught it.
He hadn't even tracked it. He had reacted exactly like a clumsy house husband. Was I crazy? Had I hallucinated the ring? Then he reached out to take my hand. You're really out of it, baby. Your hands are freezing. As he held my hand, his sleeve rode up slightly. Just above his wrist, on the inside of his forearm, was a fresh, angry red welt. The kind you get when a suppressor overheats and touches bare skin during a close-quarters struggle.
He saw me looking at it.
He yanked his hand back, pulling the sleeve down. Curling iron, he said quickly. Burn myself trying to fix the loose handle on your curling iron. I wanted to surprise you. Liar. You're so sweet, I said, the words tasting like ash. What would I do without you? Probably starve, he joked, kissing my forehead. Eat up. I ate the shepherd's pie. It was delicious. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that my husband was not only the world's deadliest assassin, but he was also a significantly better actor than I was. The next week was a psychological torture chamber. We were playing a game of chicken, but neither of us acknowledged the cars were moving. I went to work, tracking Orbit's digital footprint, and he went to stay at home, likely fulfilling high-value contracts or cleaning up the mess at the Styx Club. I hacked into the Styx Club's security feed archives. They had been wiped.
Clean.
Not a trace of the night of the masquerade. Only Orbit could do that. But here was the problem. The contract on Covey was still active. And Covey was still alive. Lilith called me on the secure line 3 days later. You're not going to believe this. The bounty on Covey just doubled. And the client says if he isn't dead in 48 hours, they're calling in the cleaners. The cleaners were a myth. A government black ops squad that didn't just kill targets, they leveled city blocks to ensure the job was done. If they came for Covey, half of London would be collateral damage. I'm taking it, I said. Anya, Orbit is involved. If you go back. Orbit won't kill me, I said, glancing at the wedding photo on my desk. I have a feeling he has a soft spot for me. You're delusional. Maybe. Send me the coordinates. Covey was hiding in a decommissioned shipyard on the Thames. A fortress of rusted iron and shipping containers. I suited up. Tactical Kevlar weave, matte black. Suppressed MP5. 2 ceramic knives. I moved through the shadows of the shipyard like smoke. I took out 3 perimeter guards without a sound. But as I neared the central warehouse, I sensed I wasn't alone. Someone else was clearing the path. Bodies were hidden in dumpsters, their necks snapped with precise efficiency. Orbit. I reached the catwalk overlooking the main floor. Covey was there, surrounded by 10 mercenaries. He was screaming into a phone. I paid you for protection. Orbit is here. I can feel him. I raised my rifle, lining up the shot. Suddenly, a figure dropped from the skylight. It was him. The black velvet suit, the golden mask. He landed in a crouch, absorbing the impact silently. Orbit. Covey shrieked. Kill him. Gunfire erupted. I watched, mesmerized. It was like watching water flow. Orbit moved with an economy of motion that was terrifyingly beautiful. He didn't dodge bullets. He was simply never where the bullets were aimed. He disarmed one man, used him as a shield, and fired 3 shots, 3 kills. But there were too many of them. A sniper from the upper gantry, one I hadn't spotted, fired. The bullet struck Orbit in the shoulder. He staggered, dropping to one knee.
No.
The scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. I broke cover. I swung over the railing and opened fire on the sniper, taking his head off. I dropped to the floor, sliding across the concrete until I was back to back with Orbit. "You're late," Orbit grunted, clutching his shoulder. "Traffic was murder," I replied, reloading my magazine. "You okay, honey?" The silence between us was heavy, despite the gunfire. "Honey," he repeated, his voice modulator turned off. It was Nathan's voice. "You knew?" "I saw the ring, you idiot." "You kept the receipt?" "It was a gift. I couldn't throw it away." "Focus," I yelled as bullets sparked against the crate we were hiding behind. "We have 12 hostiles, heavy armor." "Left flank is yours," Nathan said, his voice shifting instantly from husband mode to commander mode. "I'll take the center. On 3. 1, 2, 3. We moved. It was the most romantic moment of our marriage. We fought in perfect synchronization. I swept the legs. He delivered the killing blows. He suppressed the heavy gunners. I flanked and neutralized them.
We didn't need to speak.
We knew each other's rhythm. The way he moved to the left when he reloaded, the way I ducked after a double tap. It was the same rhythm we had in the kitchen when we cooked dinner together. Pass the salt. Pass the magazine. Chop the onions.
Gut the guard.
Within 2 minutes, silence fell over the warehouse. Covey was cowering in the center of the room, wetting his expensive pants. Nathan stood over him, the golden mask reflecting Covey's terror. He raised his gun. "Wait," I said. Nathan paused. "He's the target, Anya." "I know, but he's my contract. You technically retired, didn't you? To focus on the family?" Nathan sighed. He reached up and unclicked the mask. It hissed as the seal broke. He pulled it off, revealing his face, sweaty, streaked with grease, and incredibly handsome. "Technically," he said, "I'm on a sabbatical." He stepped back, gesturing to Covey with a mock gentlemanly bow. "Ladies first." I put a single bullet between Covey's eyes. We sat in the Aston Martin, parked by the river. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing weight of the truth. Nathan was gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He was still wearing the velvet suit, ripped at the shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. "So," he said, staring out at the water, "you're Nyx. And you're Orbit."
Yeah.
"You couldn't kill a spider," I accused. "You made me carry a spider outside in a cup, Nathan." He looked at me, looking genuinely offended. "I respect all life. Just because I kill people for money doesn't mean I want to hurt an innocent arachnid. That spider had nothing to do with global politics." "And the jar lids? I loosened them before you got to them. I wanted you to feel strong. I am strong. I bench pressed twice your body weight." "I know. It's hot." He slammed his hand on the wheel. I wanted to be normal, Anya. When I met you at that library, you looked so peaceful. So innocent. You were reading Jane Austen. I was decoding a cipher hidden in the text of Pride and Prejudice. Well, I didn't know that. I thought, here is a woman who has never crushed a windpipe. I fell in love with you because I thought you were my escape. I wanted to be Nathan the husband, not Orbit the monster. I softened. I reached out and touched his cheek. I thought the same thing. I thought you were safe. I thought protecting you was my redemption. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "So, our entire marriage is built on a lie." "Not the love," I said firmly. "The love was real. The cooking was real. The sex was real."
He smirked.
"The sex was fantastic. But the lie? Nathan, you're the top assassin in the world. I'm number 4. Number 4? You're at least number 2. The rankings are rigged." "Focus. What do we do now? The agency won't let us just walk away. And your clients, if they know Orbit is vulnerable." Nathan looked at me, his eyes hardening. The cold frost returned, but this time, it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at the world outside our car. "They won't know," he said. "Orbit is a ghost. And Nyx is a shadow. But Nathan and Anya? They're just a boring couple who like gardening." "Lilith knows," I pointed out. "Lilith values her paycheck. We can buy her silence. And if people come for us?" Nathan took my hand. He kissed my knuckles, right over the bruised skin where I'd punched a guard's helmet. "Then we kill them," he said simply. "We kill them all. We're not just assassins anymore, Anya. We're a team. And frankly, I think we're unstoppable." "Happy anniversary, darling." Nathan slid the box across the table. We were at the most expensive restaurant in Paris, overlooking the Eiffel Tower. I opened the velvet box. Inside was a new Glock 43, custom-milled, with a pearl handle and gold inlay. It's beautiful, I breathed. Does it have the compensated barrel and tritium sights? Yes. You know me so well. I reached into my purse and pulled out his gift. A whetstone. But not just any whetstone. A Japanese water stone, grit 8000, quarried from a mine that closed in 1950. Nathan gasped. Is this the Kyoto blue for your knives? He teared up. Actually teared up. This is the most romantic thing anyone has ever given me. The waiter arrived with our wine. He looked nervous. He had been looking nervous all night. He placed the bottle down, his hand shaking. Nathan and I exchanged a glance. Sir, Nathan said, his voice polite but firm. You seem anxious. I am just new, monsieur, the waiter stammered. He reached into his jacket. It wasn't for a corkscrew. Before the waiter could clear the holster, Nathan had stabbed his hand to the table with a steak knife, and I had a hidden ceramic blade pressed against the waiter's carotid artery. The restaurant went silent. Who sent you? I whispered. The syndicate. The waiter whimpered. They said you were retired. Nathan sighed, adjusting his tie. He pulled a knife out of the waiter's hand, who screamed, and used the napkin to wipe the blood off the blade. Honey, Nathan said to me, looking bored. I think we need to send a message. Clearly, the retirement memo was misunderstood. I smiled at my husband, the love of my life, the deadliest man alive. I'll take the left side of the room, I said. I've got the right, he replied. Dinner at home tomorrow? I'll make risotto. We stood up, back to back, weapons drawn, as 10 more diners stood up around the room. Ready for dessert? I asked. Always, he said. And then, the fun began.